Okay, so let's take a look at the beginning of my little demonstration here. And first I want to let you know that behind me here there's 5 different rows. Each row represents a different type of drip tape, and it has a couple of different characteristics. One would be the distance between the emitters where the water comes out, and the other one is the flow rate of that particular type of drip tape. So the first 2 beds here, we have spacings that are 8 inches apart, and the first bed is what I'm going to consider a lower flow rate, and the second bed a medium flow rate. Rows number 3 and 4 are 12-inch spacings, and also a low flow on the 3rd row and a medium flow on the 4th row. The final row in the back, the 5th row, has a spacing between the emitters of 18 inches. And I want to be able to show you how all of this affects the blue dye movement. So keep in mind, I've injected the blue dye first, and then I chase it with water. Where I'm standing now is in front of the area that got 1 hour of water after I injected the blue dye. The blue dye only takes a couple of minutes to inject, so in function, the entire hour is with irrigation. So in 1 hour, you can see that at 8-inch spacings, the emitter function meets each other, but we begin to push it down very quickly, even in 1 hour. As we move to the 12-inch spacing, it looks like we have a little better chance to be able to keep it higher in the root zone early in the season. And then the main thing that I see in the 18-inch spacing is that it's a pretty far distance for these sandy soils, and the sands do not allow the movement of the dye side to side very much. In other words, it begins to leach very quickly in these deep sands. If you have higher organic matter, clay in the soil, this particular configuration may look entirely different. But in our sands, I want you to mainly remember that it goes down very quickly. We do not have an option of moving it side to side, and therefore the irrigation intervals have got to be very, very short. So that's what we see here on the first hour. Let's go take a look and see what happens where I've run it for 2 hours. Let's take a look and see what happens when we've continued the irrigation event for 2 hours in this section. And all I've done here in this row is turn the valve off for the 1 hour and continue to irrigate it on this section of the bed. And you begin to see that the irrigation, even in a relatively short event of 2 hours, begins to move the water and the blue dye down a lot more significantly. But we begin to now move almost all of the blue dye out of what would be the shallow root system when we start to plant a crop like tomatoes or peppers or watermelons. This would be very difficult to manage on a commercial scale in these deep sandy soils. The 12-inch rows begin to show a little bit more promise to me that maybe we can manage that a little bit better in the upper part of the soils. Most of our vegetable crops have root systems that over 80% of the root system will be in the top 12 inches. And so it's very important for us to not push it down more than 12 or 15 inches if at all possible. So short events, again, would be the key. You'll notice on the final row of the 18-inch spacing, even after 2 hours, we have not been able to push it wide enough for those 2 circles of blue to meet one another. So I'm still very concerned about what I see on an 18-inch spacing in our deep sands here. So that's what happens at 2 hours. You can see that the management here gets very, very difficult in these deep sandy soils. And I've got one more area to show you where I let it continue to irrigate for 4 hours. So let's take a look and see what happens there. Okay, so let's take a look at our final component of this demonstration here. And what I've done here is just allow the water to continue for 4 hours after the initial blue dye injection. And now you can begin to see that a 4-hour event is going to be really difficult for us in the sense that it's going to begin to move a lot of that blue dye, and therefore we know also that it's moving the soluble fertilizers like nitrogen and potassium down deep as well. On the back row where the spacing is 18 inches, even after 4 hours, we still have not had those 18 inches to meet. So we still have a problem there where, in my mind, 18 inches is too far apart for our emitter spacing. I believe 8 inches is perhaps, it would work, but it might be too close and it forces more pressure on us to even have a shorter event. So our current recommendation is to be able to try to plan and work around a 12-inch spacing for this particular area of the Suwannee Valley. So the acreage in this region for watermelons in particular, we're seeing a lot of adoption of this kind of technology. Growers are being able to see this and learn what's going on. And to some degree, this is really difficult to explain for us to be able to do this until we started using the blue dye. So I just want to leave you with one little thing to think about. In this case, it's hard to argue about this. And what we say is, the blue dye don't lie.